Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining today's Burst of Innovation. Today, we're going to cover a very important topic, which is how to build psychological safety so that you can have a very positive workplace, but also drive innovation where you need it most. I want to talk a little bit about first before I dig into the hows of why psychological safety is so important. There's a couple things that study have shown with psychological safety. And one is it dials up engagement. Meaning that when your team has more of a sense of psychological safety in their work environment, they are more likely to be engaged. And we all know that leads to more productivity, more innovation, more satisfied teams, happier teams when they come to work. And all those are really important to do our jobs and to do them well, especially in times of change and uncertainty like we're in now. The other thing that psychological safety does is it builds trust in each other. I think we all know that a lack of trust is what can cause a toxic environment and what breaks down collaboration and productivity. It creates resentment among each other. But when we have psychological safety, we actually build a sense of trust. In teams that have psychological safety, it's also been shown that teams are more likely to speak up, especially when they see a problem. So let's just talk about the opposite about that for a second. When you have a team and when you don't feel psychologically safe in your team, one of the ways it shows up is lack of speaking up. So that lack of speaking up, as you know, can be a really big problem because it means when things are going wrong, when people aren't sure about the idea, when they're uncomfortable with something, they don't say something. But when we have psychological safety, people speak up. They also are more likely to disagree respectfully. We all know that ideas that come from a birds of a feather tend to die, but ideas that come from diversity of thinking tend to thrive. And in order for that to happen, we need people to feel like it's okay to disagree with each other. All right, Kirby, I hear what you're saying, but I want to give you a different perspective on that. Or Sarah, I hear that, but I feel a little bit differently about this. That works well when we disagree respectfully and when we have the psychological safety to do that. And lastly, it dials up innovation. It dials up creativity because people are more open, they're more engaged, they're speaking up more, they're connecting more, there's more trust. All those things drive a culture of innovation. So what I want to do today is I want to share with you 4 ways that you can actually drive that psychological safety. Now, there's a lot of ways to do it, but I want to start with these very simple but powerful tactics with you today. And as I'm pulling up the screen, if you're on chat or in the comments, what I want you to do is I want you to put in there either how you've experienced in a team when you don't feel psychologically safe. Like, do you retreat? Do you not speak up? Do you get combative? That's actually my go-tos. I get a little bit combative when I feel like that foundation's not there. So put that in the chat bar for me. I'm just curious in the opposite, because I think that'll help us see why it is so important to actually tackle these things. And I'm going to share my screen while you're doing that. Okay, go to my chat bar. You get anxious about coming to work. Yes, right? So when you're on a team where you feel like you're not heard, you're not valued, and it's not safe to put your best ideas forward, your challenging ideas forward, right? You get that anxious feeling in going to work. Nobody loves that. So Kirby says retreat. Sarah says retreat and combative, depending on situation. Yes, I'm combative. I'll tell you that right now. And disengaged. Yes, these are good. Exactly. And sometimes, right, we see those in the teams that we lead to. We see the anxiety, the retreat, the combativeness. That's what happens when we don't have psychological safety. So now let's flip it and let me give you 4 ways to build psychological safety in your team. You ready for them? All right. And as I'm thinking through these, I want you to put in the chat bar, as I'm talking through them, I want you to put in the chat bar how you're going to leverage this moving forward in your next meeting, your next conversation. All right. The first one is admit I don't know. So a while back, I was in a meeting with all the VPs and high-level execs at Clorox. And I was a consultant working with one of the teams. So they invited us to this meeting so we could hear how the teams were doing at the review so that we could get some ideas of where the business was headed, where they had challenges, where they had opportunities. So we're sitting in this meeting with all these very important people who are there presenting how their brands are doing that quarter. And as they're going through, everybody's talking a big game. It's great. This is happening. Well, we had this dip, but that's because of this, and we're coming back, right? Everybody had their peacock feathers out until it got to Doug. And Doug said, well, here's the deal. The numbers have dropped, and I don't know why. Hard stop. Here's the interesting thing. In a group, in a room full of people where everybody's trying to posture, everybody needs to look their best, there's a big desire to be right, to be successful, Doug just came out and said, I don't know. Now, he followed it up with, I'm going to go find out. But here's an interesting thing that happened. After Doug said, I don't know, it was like a collective sigh went around the room, like the pressure had been relieved, right? Like we'd all been in this pressure cooker, and suddenly other people started to say things like, yeah, we had this weird thing over here, but this drop in sales over here, I'm not sure. Oh, we had a rise in sales in this region. We're not even sure why, or this branding initiative worked, or this one didn't. People suddenly felt safe to open up and truly admit what they knew and what they didn't. So part of the way to create psychological safety as the leader is to say, I don't know, hard stop. And what I mean by that is, I don't know, not, I don't know, but I think it's because blah, 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 fill in justification. When we do that, it's like we're trying to back up into being right, being knowledgeable when we truly don't have the answer. Just simply saying, I don't know, has time, gives you time, right? Gives everybody the space to find that psychological safety. I don't know. All right, so the question came in, did Doug not have time to figure it out before the meeting? Great question. So it's not that he didn't have the time, it's that they weren't done figuring it out and he didn't have an actual answer yet. So maybe he didn't have the time, but it's more that he truly just didn't have the answer yet. And he followed it with, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out, right? I'm going to go figure it out. But he admitted he doesn't know. And that created a collective sigh around the room. If you don't know, say it. And here's the thing about being a leader. Oftentimes our people on our teams don't know, but they are afraid to say so. So they're too busy trying to be right, trying to be knowledgeable, trying to look successful, trying to prove their worth. And when we do that, we cover up the conversations that we need to have. We cover up the reality of the situation that would actually help us get to those stronger ideas, those more innovative ideas, find those solutions we're looking for. So say next time someone asks you a question and you don't actually fully have the answer, don't try to justify it. Don't try to, tiptoe your way into it. Just say, I don't know. Hard stop. You'll be amazed at what happens. I have not once had someone come to me and say, tomorrow I tried this and I got demoted or fired or whatever, right? More often than not, the person on the other side is thankful that you even admitted that. Now, you then have to have the confidence and the drive to say, I don't know, I'm going to go figure it out and come back, right? But it's okay to say, I don't know. And when you say, I don't know, people around you feel open to say, I don't know. The second one is to create psychological safety. This is very true for innovation, is reward ideation, not ideas. Here's the thing. When we reward ideas, right, when we focus on the output, we're basically telling people things are either right or wrong. And here's the deal with that. When we do that, teams start to feel insecure and unsafe about bringing their ideas forward. Instead, reward the process, the behavior that's getting you to the ideas that you're going to move forward. Now, I'm not saying that every idea is a good idea. It is not. Not every idea should be moved forward. But I am saying that if you want to create that bubbling up of innovation and a team that feels safe to do so, reward the ideation itself, not the ideas. That's how we avoid right versus wrong. When we reward ideas, we create a culture where people think I either need to have an idea that's 100% perfect and 100% right, or I shouldn't say it. And that's not psychological safety. In fact, that's quite the opposite. That's people people are afraid to speak up. All right, the third one is respect the diversity people bring to the table. Now, those of you on here who have been in my community for a while, you know I'm all about our everyday innovator styles. If you don't know yours, go take the assessment on our website and find out. But we know, right? We all innovate in different ways. I'm a risk taker experiential. There's some people on here who are collaborative tweakers, others who are futuristic imaginatives. But here's the thing. What becomes a challenge for all of us is we know creativity, innovation, ideas in the way that we know them. And what we've got to do is not push that onto other people. We've got to be open to their diverse way of doing it and their different ideas that they bring to the table. We have to be open to different. So I know that my style of speaking up is very bold and direct, right? I'm very motivated by leaping and building new things and doing things that I've never done before. And I know that my ideas, right, tend to be on the bold kind of like big side, where somebody else who maybe is an instinctual inquisitive, they're more about seeing the insights and the patterns, and then their ideas are going to be a little bit more connected, meaning it's like all these random dots that come together to paint a picture. Or if they're inquisitive, their ideas tend to be a little bit deeper, meaning they're like solving the problem behind the problem behind the problem. All of them are good. They're all important, actually. In fact, what's really important is when you bring all that together to create those stronger ideas. It goes back to birds of a feather don't work. Ideas from diversity of thinking thrive. But we have to be open to being different. Oftentimes what I see, the mistake that we make is I will have a meeting I'll be with Sarah in a meeting and Sarah will have an idea and I'll be like, I don't get that, right? It doesn't make sense to me. But what I'm really doing is shutting it down because it doesn't look the way I would do it. So we need to be open and respectful of what that diversity is that people bring to the table. I want to say one other thing on here. It is really important that we have a work culture where people respect and value each other. But what we don't want to do is build a culture of consensus. Okay, that doesn't work. It has been proven time and time again that leads to failure. What we want to do is build a culture of collaboration where people bring diverse thinking to the table to make ideas, solutions, the result, the work stronger. But we got to be open to the fact that, hey, it's not weird, it's different. And different is actually really good. And the question I always like to ask myself is, what can I get out of their different perspective and thinking? But if we want to build real psychological safety, we've got to get into the habit of respecting the diversity of thinking that all of our people around us bring to the table. When people feel like they have to be like somebody else to be respected, to be considered in the meeting, they shut down, right? If that's how your team works, people will shut down eventually. Okay, and number 4, build extreme ownership. Oftentimes what erodes psychological safety is the blame game, right? They didn't do it in time. You didn't give me this. They should have looked at it this way. They should have gotten the idea and didn't. Your numbers didn't match up, so therefore mine didn't, right? We've all got those lines, don't we? I want you to think about, if you want to build psychological safety, I want you to avoid the words they and you. I learned that from an incredible guy, David Marquette, who was the commander of a US submarine, a nuclear submarine. So one of the things he did on his ship when he took it over, because they had some toxicity issues in their culture, was he actually made people remove the word they. And he tells this story of how, like, he went to someone and said, why isn't XYZ done? And they started to say, like, they didn't give me the bolts and the screws that I needed, right? Instead he said they, and he stopped himself and he said, I didn't get the materials on time. Ownership removes blame. And when that happens, people start to work together better, stronger. They start to seek ways to collaborate because the blame game is gone. The blame game erodes everything. I'll just tell you on a personal note, like the minute like my kids start to say anything like, well, they didn't blah, 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 or the teacher XYZ or whatever, I'm like, stop, rephrase. They know in my house, you don't use they and you, right? It's I, and this is what I did, this is me. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't outside factors that impact your work, but I am saying extreme ownership removes blame. All right, so psychological safety is so important. Engagement, innovation, speaking up, trust, happiness in the workplace. And teams that have psychological safety have been proven to have better results, stronger business results. So my question for you is, put in the chat bar or in the comment section, of these 4, which one are you going to work on in your next meeting, conversation with your team, however you are connected to other people in your world? Are you going to say, I don't know? Hard stop, say it with confidence. I think saying I don't know is actually one of the most confident things that you can do because it shows vulnerability. And when you show vulnerability, people feel more connected to each other. Are you going to say, I don't know? Are you going to reward ideation and not ideas? Avoid that right and wrong. I get it. Successes should be honored. But if you want more successes, you got to do more ideation to get there. And if people are holding back and reserving their ideas because they're afraid they're going to be wrong, you're not getting what you need out of your team. All right, respect the diversity people bring to the table. Be open to different. Here's what I found. When I got open to different, it turns out that those different ideas sometimes are actually better than mine. And that's great, right? So how great is it, though, that when you're open to those difference in ideas, that you can see actually stronger thinking around you as well. And that makes you stronger and everything you do together stronger. All right, are you going to do that? Respect the diversity of people, and are you going to build extreme ownership by avoiding they and you? All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Jerry says, can I just do all of them? I'm taking a screenshot. Yes, in fact, take a screenshot. And this is a great conversation, by the way, to have with your leadership, with your team, and say, hey, we want to build a team culture that's about psychological safety and innovation. So here's some things that we're going to do. All right. And Kirby says, I say that is a good idea when someone brings ideas to the table, encourage the idea to generate the best solution. Yeah. Number 2, I even say, I don't know when asked questions I truly do not know, instead of posturing or putting something out there. So Kirby, I think your word posturing is exactly it. That's well said. Right? When we say, I don't know, but I think blah, 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 and we start dancing and singing our way to pretending like we know what we're talking about, we're actually posturing. And that's exactly what I saw in that meeting, until that brave person, Doug, just flat out said, I don't know. And then let the awkward silence fill the room. And he meant it. I don't know, right? And then followed with, I'm going to go figure this out. So Paul says, you know me, love being inclusive of diversity of thought. So I'll focus on rewarding the ideation process, not the ideas, just the ideas themselves. Awesome, Paul. These are so good. Yeah. So that's the other thing, right? When we reward and focus on the ideation process, we're rewarding people for the contributions they bring to the table. And here's the thing, I've said this time and time again, people don't need to be right, but they do need to feel valued and heard. So we need to make sure that people feel valued and heard. When they do that, they'll do more of it, which is exactly what we're going for. Okay, Gail says, I'm going to admit I don't know. That's really hard for me, but you're right. I find myself posturing because I'm afraid if I don't know, I'll look stupid. Okay, so first of all, thank you, Gail, for admitting that. Of course, you look stupid. I mean, of course that didn't come out right. Of course you feel like you look stupid. We all feel that way. Like, that is our little primal brain in there saying, if you admit you don't know, they'll think you're an idiot. But the reality is it's vulnerability, it's confidence, and it shows the team that it's okay to not have all the answers all the time. Now, in some of those situations, you better need to go figure it out, and that's okay. But it's okay at that starting point. And here's the thing, how can you find the right solution or know the right steps forward if you're not even admitting what you don't know and what you need to figure out, right? You're starting from a false place if you do it the other way. All right. Paul says, tell Bernard to back off. Yeah, Bernard, back off. Bernard, for those of you new, is my primal brain. That's what I call him, is Bernard. All right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to hear what you got out of this week and how you implemented it. Remember, these bursts of innovation are all about you, and they're all about helping you think a little bit differently as you go through the week, helping you work a little smarter instead of a little harder, and driving some of that innovation. So thank you for joining me. I will see you next week.